and welcome to the program. I am Deji Badimasi. Nigeria now officially have a national budget for 2018. President Muhammadu Buhari signed or assented to the budget, if you like, on Wednesday, June the 20th, 2018, 7 clear months after he submitted the budget to the National Assembly for consideration. Now, we all thought we had seen or heard the last with budget padding, with the controversial 2017 budget, but I guess we were wrong. Despite signing the budget, the president took issues with the country's lawmakers, accusing them of inserting 6,403 projects into the budget, amounting to 578 billion naira. He also accused the lawmakers of cutting off 4,700 key projects from the budget proposal he submitted to them. The cut, he says, amount to 347 billion naira. The president clearly warned that the cuts and padding made by the lawmakers would make the budget difficult to implement, adding that he would have to come back to the National Assembly soon with both a supplementary budget and an amendment to address the issue. Take a listen now to the president as he lists some of the key projects affected by the cuts and padding.
Such an example of projects from which cuts were made are as follows. A. The provisions for some nationally, regionally strategic infrastructure projects, such as funding for the Mambila power plant, second Niger bridge ancillary roads, the east to west road, Boni Bodo road, Lagos Ibadan expressway, and Itape Ajakuta rail project were cut by an aggregate of 11.5 billion naira. Similarly, provisions for some ongoing critical infrastructure projects in the FCT, Abuja, especially major arterial roads, and the mass transit rail project were cut by a total of 7.5 billion naira. The provision for rehabilitation and additional security measures for the United Nations building by the FCT Abuja was cut by 3.9 billion naira from 4 billion naira to 100 billion naira. This will make it impossible for the federal government of Nigeria to fulfill its commitment to the United Nations on this project. D. The provision for various strategic interventions in the health sector, such as the upgrade of some tertiary health institutions, transport and storage of vaccines through the cold chain supply system, provision of antiretroviral drugs for persons on treatment, establishment of chemotherapy centers, and procurement of dialysis consumables were cut by an aggregate amount of 7.45 billion naira. E. The provision for security infrastructure in the 104 unity schools across the country were cut by 3 billion naira at a time when securing our students against acts of terrorism ought to be a major concern of government. F. The provision for the federal government's national housing program was cut by 8.7 billion naira. G. At a time when we are working with labor to address compensation-related issues, a total of 5 billion naira was cut from the provision for pension redemption fund and public service wage adjustment. H. The provision for export expansion grant and special economic zone industrial parks, which are key industrialization initiatives of this administration, were cut by a total of 14.5 billion naira. I. The provision for construction of the terminal building at Enugu Airport was cut from 2 billion naira to 500 million naira, which will further delay the completion of this critical project. The take-up grant for the Maritime University in Delta State, a key strategic initiative of the federal government, was cut from 5 billion naira to 3.4 billion naira. About 70 new road projects have been inserted into the budget of the Federal Ministry of Power, Works and Housing. In doing so, the National Assembly applied some of the additional funds expected from the upward review of the oil price benchmark to the ministry's vote. Regrettably, however, in order to make provision for some of the new roads, the amounts allocated to some strategic major roads have been cut by the National Assembly. Another area of concern is the increase by the National Assembly of the provisions for statutory transfers by an aggregate of 73.96 billion naira. Most of these increases are for recurrent expenditure at a time we are trying to keep down the cost of governance. An example of this increase is the budget of the National Assembly itself, which has increased by 14.5 billion naira, from 125 billion naira to 139.5 billion naira, without any discussion with the executive.
Now, some lawmakers who were present at the signing ceremony admitted that some of President Buhari's complaints were genuine, but also insisted that the legislators were just doing their job and that they were not a rubber stamp legislature.
No, about the issue of delay, the president is right, but at the same time, if you remember, you were here when president had to order some MDS to appear before the National Assembly for the purpose of defending their budget. You see, it's a very delicate issue. If somebody says he wants 500 billion for maintenance of bridges nationwide, and then you expect the National Assembly to say, okay, that budget is approved because it's coming from the executive, we have not done our work. We will be interested in knowing which of the roads are you going to maintain, so that, again, we don't give another allocation in the next budget. Those observations are correct, but in the budgeting process, those things are normal. Nigerians should be happy that we have formally have a budget to run for 2018 budget, and it has been signed today. And then the president had made it clear that it's going to be a build-up on the achievements so far recorded by this administration in impacting positively on the lives of Nigerians. I think this should be what Nigerians should be happy about.
I think some of these major concerns Mr. President has raised are very critical, and I'm afraid if I should be in a position to really respond on behalf of the House. But for me, as an individual and as a member of the House of Representatives, I want to believe that the President is at liberty to raise some of these observations he has raised. But the most important thing you have to note is that the budget is at least now signed by the President. The budget is now law of the Federation, and we expect the executive arm of government to now implement the budget to the latter. Should the President now have other concerns to bring about maybe amendments or some other supplementary budgets for the National Assembly to consider, I think we will at the same time also be at liberty to look at the President's concerns and look at those things that he wants us to now review. And I want to believe the National Assembly is always in a position to work hand in hand with Mr. President. A lot of us in the National Assembly, in both the chambers, I want to assure you, have tremendous respect for Mr. President. We we cherish his moral integrity as a leader, and I want to believe we will always play in tune to his expectations to make him be able to deliver on the dividend of democracy like he has promised, especially in this period that is an election period. Some of us that are in the APC, and even a lot of other members that are even in the opposition, are quite aware of the enormous responsibility on the shoulders of Mr. President. And this is the right time to cooperate with Mr. President and give him what he desires as the leader of the government and deliver on the people's expectation.
Now, the National Assembly has also given an official response. In a statement, the House of Representatives justified the inclusion of new projects in the 2018 budget, insisting it is a duty of the National Assembly to make changes in the budget. Spokesperson of the House, Abdul Razak Nandas, in a statement explained that the Nigerian Constitution did not indicate that federal lawmakers cannot make input to the national budget. But that official response has done nothing to ease the tension with some stakeholders, including the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, calling for actions against the lawmakers. Joining me now on the program to discuss this further is the executive director of that organization, SERAP now, Adetokunbo Momoni, who, by the way, is also a lawyer. Mr. Momoni, thank you very much for coming on the program.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're a lawyer. What the lawmakers did, is it constitutional or not?
Let me just start with some historical background. In the First Republic, budgets were passed. In the Second Republic, budgets were passed. In the short-lived Third Republic, budgets were passed by lawmakers. You won't hear of this addition because, you see, what the Constitution says is a budget shall be prepared and laid by the President before the houses of the National Assembly. It's for the National Assembly to now pass the budget. Will
they pass the budget without making any input?
No. The way to do it will be when you have something to add, you get it back to the executive. So that it becomes the document of the executive.
Rather than add something that even the ministries do nothing about.
No, that is not the way to do it. You will not, if you recollect Nigeria's recent political history, you will hear of legislators adding and the executive complaining. That's not the way it works. Because the law does not expect you to be a partaker in the budget making process. You are only an approving authority because you control effectively the purse.
Because basically it would appear what the lawmakers are doing, they're constituting themselves into budget makers as well. They're preparing and approving the budget themselves.
That should not happen because that is not what the Constitution envisages. It says, let somebody else prepare it and lay it before you. You simply approve. When you are looking into it and you think there are things to be added, you call those that present the budget to you, discuss with them, so that it becomes totally their document. Yours is merely approval. That is the way it should go. Because the truth of the matter is that you won't hear something of this nature in the First Republic, Second Republic, in the Third Republic that was aborted. It is only now that we hear of this.
With what is happening, it happened in 2017, it's happening in 2018 again. I don't know, don't you have that fear that if this is allowed to continue, we might get to a stage where the National Assembly would basically sit down to prepare the budget of the country and approve it?
You see, I have continued to wonder why Nigeria as a nation cannot follow its laws. You remember a member of the House of Representatives in 2016, 2017 was talking about budget padding, and he accused certain people. EFCC investigated those issues. The report of the EFCC is still with the EFCC. And you see, when things are done, infractions of laws are committed, and there are no consequences, the tendency that the people that will do it will continue to be engaged in impunity. And that is very, very dangerous. And that's why, you see, when things happen in violation of laws and things are not done appropriately to checkmate it, that's why we continue to have more of those issues. You see, the EFCC are not, I got information and I know that the EFCC found some people culpable in that matter. But the vials to take them to court, I don't know whether it is the president that is delaying or something, but that should not be happening in a society where laws.
And that inaction is what is probably causing.
Yes, because when it has happened in the past, nothing happened. The tendency are for people to continue in that light. That to us is unacceptable.
And there's a challenge here. If these lawmakers, inserting 6,403 projects into the budget, and the president in laying his, making his complaint actually said some of these projects, they were not properly conceptualized, no design, not properly costed. The question you ask is, you would need these various ministries and departments and of course parastatals of government to execute those projects. So how are they going to execute projects that basically know nothing about?
You see what the legislators have decided to do which they have done is an intention to corruptly enrich themselves. You see, when you say constituency project, there have been instances in Nigeria history where projects are commissioned, are done by the federal government in communities where they are relevant. It is not for the legislator to say, I will be the one to implement or to execute it. Because the truth of the matter is that when you see, yours is to make laws as allowed by the Constitution. Yours is to do oversight functions as allowed. Remember that Professor Jega said in their oversight business, what they engage in is demanding for bribes and all. They've not come to challenge Professor Jega, who delivered a lecture openly. They were present. The president was there. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, the president was there. He laid that complaint to the public. So, what we must ensure that what we want to make sure that happens is that we should not continue to allow this thing to pass. I now talk about active citizenship. You see, when things like this happens and Nigerian citizens leave it to the president, leave it to some other people, Nigerian citizens will be saying the most important office in Nigeria is the office of the Senate President, the office of the Speaker of the House of Representatives, is the office of the President. But Nigerian citizens should remember that the most important office under a democracy is the office of the citizen of Nigeria, where whatever is done, people will be called to account and things start getting systematized and being in place. Because when you leave things to happen and leave things to chance to people that you have elected to represent you, and they are not doing what they should do, then it's like we are saying we leave it to them, let them do whatever they like. But that should not be the situation in the democracy. It is never done.
I know your group is asking the president, and I wonder if that is not going to for you. You're saying the president should probably, is it go to the International Criminal Court and lay a complaint? Why not the courts of the land?
You see, let me tell you straight away that the Nigerian courts, by the Nigerian Constitution, you understand, cannot handle matters of this nature. When you go before the Nigerian court, the reason is that there becomes issues of socioeconomic importance. And the Constitution has said those things contained in Chapter 12 of the Constitution are not justiciable. And it becomes a matter of law. When you approach the court, they will simply say, the Constitution says they are not justiciable. We were at the Federal High Court early in our life, around 1997 or 98. We took a matter to the Code of Conduct Tribunal. And we took the Code of Conduct Tribunal to court. And the judge praised us so much, but he eventually ruled according to law to say, unfortunately, this thing that you have brought before me, the Constitution has said they are not justiciable. And once they are not justiciable, it becomes an academic exercise. Beautiful judgment, commended Sarah, that is what we expect of right groups in Nigeria, but so that is the point. And that is what leads us to ECOWAS court at times, to the African Commission at times, to the ICC at times. You see, when a group of legislators who are supposed to fight for the people are removing projects in matters of education, in matters of health, in matters of security, things that affect and touch the lives of the majority of Nigerians. To us, we believe that is a manner of committing crimes against humanity.
But doesn't it, okay, and that's the reason why
we said the president should ask the Attorney General to file a matter before the ICC.
Doesn't it surprise you that, these lawmakers, let me just take some of the projects that the president cited, for instance, the East-West Road. I know that the South-South region of the country has been complaining about that East-West Road, shouting for ages now that road has not been completed. Now, doesn't it surprise you that the lawmakers representing that zone would sit down and allow their colleagues, so to speak, to remove what has been budgeted to fix that road and divert it to somewhere else. Same thing goes for the Niger, the second Niger bridge. You have the southeast of the country. The people of that part of the country for ages have been shouting over that second Niger bridge, asking that the government does it. And now money is voted for the second Niger bridge, and you know, the lawmakers from that part of the country would sit down and allow monies meant for the construction of that second Niger bridge now to be diverted to somewhere else.
That's to tell you that those that we now call our lawmakers are not acting in the best interest of the generality of Nigeria.
Same thing goes for the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway.
Exactly. How will you be removing funds from things that people will feel, people will easily align themselves with, and you now divert the money to unspecified, unascertain, more or less issues? Because that is what I think.
And the president made it clear that most of the projects are actually not within the purview.
Because when you have not conceptualized a project properly, implementations become difficult. And I will not be surprised if we now start experiencing lack of implementation of what they have suggested. Because what they have done is, to me, illegal in a manner of speaking. But they are using power to make law for illegal purpose, which the International Convention Against Corruption forbids. When you want to exercise your lawmaking power, you will exercise it in a manner not to the detriment of the people you say you represent.
I guess the people of these various areas now that I've mentioned, the people of the southwest now with the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, the people of the southeast with the second Niger Bridge, south with the east-west road. I guess the people of this part of the country should begin to call their lawmakers to order and ask them why they had to do what they did. I would expect, for instance, the people of Lagos, Ogun,
the West,
the West, yes, to call their lawmakers and ask them why they had to take that decision. I mean, the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway has been under construction for ages, and now we're diverting money.
When we have people in power that do not care about infrastructural, they are not concerned about the infrastructural deficit that we have. We now have a government that says it is not a question of initiating new things. Let us complete those that. That to me is the way to go. But you see, Nigerians in their multitude must start demanding serious, cogent answers from these lawmakers. Otherwise, they will continue to behave in this way. Then the issue of the investigation into earlier budget padding that had been investigated. Why not ask the EFCC to go into it and prosecute whoever is prosecutable, permitted to do that expression, once we have sufficient evidence that can be from the base of sound conviction available.
It's actually very worrying. But going forward, how do you think this issue can be resolved? Of course, the president has said he's going back to the National Assembly. He would seek amendment, probably submit a supplementary budget. But the fear is that there's a chance that most of these projects will not be executed.
It's because those who we call our legislators are not interested in what concerns us. And that is why they are behaving this way. I have formed the opinion since the beginning of this National Assembly, and from what they have done, I've formed the opinion that they are not interested in what concerns.
Are you surprised that they increased their own budget by 14.5%?
Definitely. You see, I have watched the National Assembly, let me tell you. When they throw stones, when they cause chaos on the floor of the Senate of the House of Representatives, it has not been on matters that affect Nigerian people. It's always matters that relates to their purpose out of office. I have continued to notice that a lot of them don't come to sitting, and when they come, when they will bicker among themselves about anything, it will be matters relating to their emoluments and you see, when Nigerian workers collect 18,000 naira per month, and you now say somebody is representing a group of people anywhere, and takes home 13.5 million naira for the House of Reps, or is it the Senate? So you now see what we found, an unjust, unsustainable system. Because you cannot see anywhere in any other part of the world where their legislators earn such humongous amount of money in the face of a depressed economy. I would say such payments are not sustainable. We believe that when you say you represent the people, you must live your life just exactly or a little bit higher than the way people survive in the society. But Nigerians are just existing, surviving. They are not living really good because of the tragedy that we have faced within the last pre-2015, 1999 to 2015. Okay. If the government of Obasanjo, the government of Yar'Adua, the government of Jonathan had done a fraction of what Buhari is doing now, we won't be in this situation. Yes. That's my sincere opinion.
Thank you very much. Let's wait and see if the government will want to take your advice by heading to the ICC over this issue.
It's a pleasure.
We'll just wait and see what happens. Adetukumba Mumuni, Executive Director, SERAP, thank you very much for coming on the program.
It's a pleasure being with you.
I love the way your organization keeps coming out, on issues especially affecting Nigerians. You're always at the forefront.
Thank you very much.
It's a good one. Well done.
It's a burden that we have placed on ourselves in the interest of Nigerian people.
All right, we'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue this discussion on the 2018 budget.